Hello everyone, I am here. Let me get to my YouTube channel to check on your guys' comments. Okay. Alright, we have Mark here, we have Ryan Hines, Tyler, how's it going? Cool, Tyler will be watching my latest episode of Queen Mary's Lost and Abandoned Places, which we did yesterday with my friend Steve, and so that was a particularly good episode, I think, because there was just a lot of good information crammed into it. Even though it is an hour and 50 minutes long, it still was a really good episode, I think. Justin's here, Freedom is here, Conrad, Kevin, Daniel, Louisville, Mike. Awesome. Okay, so I don't really have I usually have a sandwich or something prepared, like a tea sandwich or something, but I didn't feel that hungry today. So I was just like, oh well, I'll just have some my usual stuff. So what I have here facing the camera is homemade Scottish shortbread. I always make that for my tea times. It's too expensive to purchase the usual brands that people buy in the UK, so I just make it myself. And then over here, though, is the McVitie's chocolate-covered digestives. So they're tea biscuits. I know digestives sounds kind of like a medical term, but it really is just for tea, and it's really delicious. Today we're having what's called Lady Grey tea, which is like Earl Grey, kinda, but just a different flavor, a bit more floral. And I rotate between English breakfast tea, Earl Grey, and Lady Grey. I did have Irish breakfast tea also amongst my different teas. But over time, I just kind of realized I just didn't like it as much. I was, every time I had tea time, I was looking forward to either Lady Grey, Earl Grey, or English breakfast. So I was just kind of like, who am I kidding? I like Irish breakfast tea, but I look forward to these more. Just, you know. So, and I don't necessarily have those teas every single day. I mean, they're in my cupboard, but I don't have them every single day. Instead, I have a English breakfast tea because it's a bit cheaper to purchase. Alright, now I'm going to preheat the china, which means dumping out half of the tap water that I put in there. Yeah. And then I re-top it off with boiling water, so that way I don't shock the china into cracking. And then I let that sit for a minute or two to get completely hot. Alright. Oh, my chat is not keeping up with the actual chat. Let's see. Where is... Okay. Hello, Kevin. Hello, AFox. HenryHallFan is here. Hello. You guys should definitely check out HenryHallFan's channel. He's my friend Shiloh. He does all kinds... The music that's playing right now in the background is from his channel. So he does all kinds of music from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, sometimes even 60s. It's usually all band music from different countries, including the US as well. So really amazing stuff. He just posted a video the other day, and I loved it. I listen to his music when I'm cooking dinner. So usually that's the time when I have time to actually sit down, or not sit down, but to not do work and then listen to music. And so that's what I do. And it's, he puts together these playlists that are like an hour, to 2 hours long. and it's just great. I can just cook the whole time and listen to old band music while I do that. So definitely check out his channel, and that's HenryHallFan. Hello, Swag. How's it going? Christian, how's it going? Mark says, I adore the Formica and white Bakelite fittings in Queen Mary's bathrooms and other public spaces. So advanced for the 1930s and very plush for the time. Yeah, I agree. You know, it's funny because when I was really young, and I mean young, like I was a kid, my great-grandmother, a lot of her bathroom fixtures were like Formica and Roanoid and Bakelite and stuff like that. And as a kid, I thought it looked so cheap. You know, I had, you know, all my friends, their houses had like granite and all these modern materials. And I thought, oh, this is so much better. But as I grew older and I had more of an appreciation for the history of things like Formica and Bakelite, I started to see like how luxurious the items were. And when you've put them together in the right combination, it makes for a really amazing interior design that is very retro, but beautiful nonetheless. And the Queen Mary is one of those places where, you know, like we were saying in our live stream yesterday, which go check it out, you guys, if you haven't seen it. It's called Queen Mary's Lost Places, and this episode was about third class spaces. But yeah, you know, it's you walk aboard the Queen Mary, you look at the things like the bathrooms and some of the interiors, and you know, it is kind of shocking to see this beautiful wood paneling, and then all of a sudden there's Bakelite handrails there. And so you're kind of like, what's this plastic doing here? But it was luxurious for the time, you know? And so I think that's really cool. You know, I have been trying to purchase some Bakelite antiques, you know, something to just kind of keep around the house. For the longest time, I was looking for a Bakelite letter opener because I end up having to open letters a lot, and it really bothers me to like try to open letters. So, and I ended up buying a letter opener, but not Bakelite. I ended up buying this really cool. It's an antique letter opener. It's made of it's mahogany, and I'm almost sure that the type of mahogany is what's it called? No, I'm sorry, not mahogany, ebony. I'm pretty sure this is Makassar ebony. I'm like almost certain this is Makassar ebony. And the little 3 dots that you see in the blade, that is ivory. So it's ebony and ivory. It's really cool. And the owner who I bought it from, they didn't really have a description of where it came from or how long they've had it, but it's really cool. And you definitely can tell it's dated by the fact that it has the ivory, because, you know, you haven't seen real ivory put in stuff for quite a while. So, but yeah, Bakelite is what I was talking about. Oh, look at that. We got Elvis Presley, King of Rock and Roll, here in the chat. Awesome. A-Fox says, what time is it for you? For me, it is 4 p.m. So for me, it is perfectly... Well, it's 4:10 p.m. to be specific. But it is tea time where I live. That's why I always do these. For some people, this is like 2 o'clock in the morning. To some people, this is 11 o'clock in the morning. And, you know... And to some people, this is late at night, like 10 p.m. And so some people ask me, oh, can you do this earlier in the day? And I'm like, I could, but it's weird to have afternoon tea before 4 p.m. That's not when you have it. And plus, I'm usually too busy before 4 p.m. to do anything. So I don't really have time to sit down and have an afternoon tea, but sometimes I do. Louisville says, have you heard of Emperor Hirohito of Japan? Yes, definitely. Emperor Hirohito was the emperor during the time of World War II, and he had ended up having to give away a lot of his power after Japan had signed the peace treaty. But Emperor Hirohito was also, you know, the first emperor of Japan to visit Disneyland, and on his visit to Disneyland, he was the first head of state or passenger even to ride aboard Walt Disney's Lily Bell parlor car in 1975? 1975, that's right, yeah. So, yeah, I know Emperor Hirohito. Daniel says, hey Alex, I'm taking woodshop class in high school and I'm planning to make a wooden model of my own ocean liner design, you know, the King Edward drawing I sent you. If I do finish, I'll show you. Awesome, yeah, I look forward to that. Bill says, I had afternoon tea in the Olympic Suite White Swan Hotel today. Very enjoyable. In the room with paneling, windows, ceiling, and etc. from the Olympic. Oh, yes, I know that place. Yeah, when I go to the UK, there's a place in Bristol, England, and they have what's called the Mauretania room, which is it's a kind of like a fancy pub or bar, but the entire interior is paneled with the first class main lounge paneling from the original Mauretania. So that's one I look forward to. I can't make it to the White Swan Hotel to see the Olympic one, but I can make it to see the Mauretania one, which, to be honest, is the one I care more about. You know, I love Olympic, but I love Mauretania more. Okay, so I've completely emptied out the teapot, because now it's time to brew the tea. So I'm going to fill that up. Hard to see. And then I'm going to let the teapot sit open for a while to cool just a few degrees, because the Lady Grey tea is really sensitive, and she does not like to be boiled in water. So, otherwise it'll taste really bad. So, yeah, that was a suggestion from one of my viewers who might be here. Pookie Smoochie gave me that suggestion, and it worked. It's much better tasting. A Fox says, I'm from Ireland. Awesome. You know, on my mother's side of the family, a lot of her family comes from Ireland. I believe a lot of them had lived in Dublin, and yeah, they're from all over. It's been so long since I've seen the family genealogy, but yeah, my mom used to follow that a lot. And then some of my family is from England. All on my mom's side, though. So yeah, I've got a little bit of Irish and English in me. Krishan says, did you know in Taiwan it's 7 in the morning? No, I didn't. Wow. Ryan Hines says, I'm curious, Alex, but what are in your sandwiches? Depends on what sandwich I'm eating. I prepare different sandwiches for this tea time. I don't have any sandwiches today because I just didn't feel like eating that much today because, you know, I don't know. I'm going to have kind of a big dinner, so I just didn't feel like eating that much. But usually I make cucumber tea sandwiches. So when I do that, it's really simple. It's basically you slice up cucumbers into planks, not circles, because circles is just harder to, when you need to cut the sandwich up, it just makes it harder. So I do planks of cucumber. And then you got to prepare the spread. And the spread is usually 2 parts cream cheese to 1 part mayonnaise. Then you season with a pinch of garlic powder and a pinch of salt, and then you chop up some fresh dill. I wouldn't recommend using dried dill. I tried it. It tastes like like a cigar wrapper. So I would use fresh dill. And you can substitute with chives if you don't have dill. And then you chop that up finely, and then you mix all that into a nice paste, and then you spread that on the bread. You have to use sandwich bread. You can't use like French bread or something. It just doesn't work that way. You have to use sandwich bread. And my bread that I use is usually multigrain. I love multigrain bread, and I also don't get enough grains in, so I like multigrain bread, and that's how I do it. So I spread the spread, put the planks of cucumber, put it together. I freeze it for, about an hour, just because it makes it easier to cut up, believe it or not. So I freeze it for about an hour. Then when tea time is ready, I take it out, put it on a cutting board, chop off all the crusts, which then I proceed to eat because I'm so hungry. I don't even want to wait for the live stream to start. So I eat all the crusts, and then I cut what's left of the sandwich into what's called fingers, which are just little rectangles, just 3 rectangles. And then that's how I do my afternoon tea sandwiches. It's kind of I want to say like a modern take on a traditional tea sandwich, because traditionally you would really just put the spread of cream cheese and mayonnaise, maybe not even mayonnaise. I think originally they just used cream cheese, and then when the French kind of introduced them to mayonnaise, they were kind of like, okay, we like mayonnaise in some of the cream cheese. But yeah, so it used to be just cream cheese and cucumber, but that's a bit too bland for my taste. So I do like doing the dill and the garlic powder and the salt, and it's really delicious. It's people who've tried it, they're like, this is addicting. And I'm like, I know, there's just something about it that these odd ingredients go together really well, and they make for a really flavorful lunch. So, okay, so the tea's going in now. It brews for 4 minutes, so 4:22 is when the tea will be ready. I have to be really careful because the lids of these teapots, they usually, well, this one I forgot doesn't have it, but they usually have like these, what's missing here is there's like a little lip that sticks out. It sticks out from the side, but it's missing on this one because the person who previously owned this broke this. They didn't realize that there were little lips that stick out, and that makes it so, when you make sure there's no spiders in here, it makes it so when you need to close the lid on the teapot, you actually have to slide the lid down into it, because if you try to just put the lid down, you will break off those little like lips. And what those are is that they hold on to the lid a bit more, not perfectly, but a bit more, so that way when you're on the ocean liner and it's kind of rocking, it's rolling back and forth, the lid won't just slide right off. And so that's what it was for. But the previous person who owned this teapot, they didn't know 2 things. One, they didn't know that there were like little lips on the lid, so they like put the lid down and smashed it in, and they broke that part. And then the other thing they didn't know was that real china, you can't just take cold china and pour boiling water in it. You will shock it and crack it, and you won't be able to use it. And so this one, if I pour tea, it'll hold the liquid mostly, but it'll come seeping out little hairline cracks that are on the bottom and the side. There's one on the side here somewhere. Yeah, right here. It's little hairline cracks. But if you saw this in person, you will see that the cracks are stained brown with the tea. So it's unfortunate, and I thought about selling this to somebody. I'm not really sure who would buy it, and frankly the person who sold this to me sold it to me for a really expensive price, which I thought it was in good condition, but it was not. So I decided to keep it just because, at least I can take good care of it as a display piece, even though it's not really perfect for, for functioning as a teapot anymore. Let's see. Swag says, hey Alex, just back from my month-long vacation and someone got my account, so I'll be changing the name. Oh, okay. Someone got into it. Okay. Jeez. Ozzy says, how is the weather today? And will Alex burn his fingers today? Definitely. How is the weather today? It's a little warm. Not bad. It's 89 degrees Fahrenheit right now. Okay, that is kind of bad. 89 degrees Fahrenheit right now. Thankfully, I have my new air conditioner going, so it's not bothering me at all. I can actually wear a jacket to tea time because I'm not worried about the weather. I'm looking at myself in the stream, and it's like the jacket is like folding out. Hey Mike, how's it going? SS Louisville says, will you do a video on what if Wilhelm Gustloff never sank? I don't see myself doing that. I don't always like to make what if videos. I do it sometimes because sometimes the curiosity just really strikes me. Like when I did my video about what if the Queen Mary hit Titanic's iceberg. That was just a weird video because I was really curious to make a video about that. But I'm not really curious to make a video about, you know, what if Wilhelm Gustloff never sank, you know. So Doc says, hi Alex, hope you are well. Do you have any other voiceover narrated tours aside from the one Queen Mary video? Like voiceover narrated tours of the Queen Mary or of anywhere else? Do I have any of anywhere else? I don't think so. I don't think, well, definitely not the Queen Mary, that's for sure, because when I did that narrated tour, the intention was when the ship reopened, which we thought it would reopen before summer, and then, look at that. I thought I'd be going to the Queen Mary and filming more of the ship, and then I could make more tours, like more in-depth tours of the ship. But the ship has not reopened yet. Now there's, you know, they were up until recently saying October 1st. Now they're saying late fall because they're not sure that they'll get it open by October 1st. They are doing repairs on it, and they're doing a wonderful job from what I've heard of repairing it. So it's just that it's taking a while. So, yeah. When it does reopen, my hope is to go there and to film it myself, to make more tours and things, and make more videos about very specific stuff that I couldn't capture last time I was there. But I don't have any more tours of Queen Mary until then. And I haven't made tours yet of other places, but that being said, oh, it's time for the tea. I overbrewed it. But that being said, earlier this year I did go visit the H4 Hercules, also known as the Spruce Goose. And when I went there, I filmed it extensively. So technically I could make a narrated tour of the H4 Hercules after making my history video, or before making my history video about it. And that's exactly why I filmed it that way, was so I could do multiple things with the footage I got. I like to reuse my footage, because, you know, it's, you know, why not, you know? So, so I can see myself doing that. But I haven't been to too many places where I could do tours. I wish I could. I really wish I could. But it does cost a lot of money to travel. Okay, so tea is ready. Wyatt says, hello, excuse me for being late to tea time, no problem. Mary says, hello, sorry I'm late, love your channel. Oh, thank you, Mary. Tyler says, Alex, I've been reading this book called A Brilliant Night of Stars and Ice, and it's way past cool. Oh, awesome. I would say, like, oh, I'll try it, but I literally have a list of books that I need to read. I don't even know how to get through it. I do a lot of reading now. And it's funny because I read so much about ocean liners and about other stuff that I kind of like want to like sit down and read something a bit more like a novel as opposed to an engineering book. So I'm kind of missing that right now. Like I just, before the stream, I'm not even kidding, before the stream, I just picked up an old book of mine, The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. She's one of my favorite authors. And I haven't read that book since like just after high school is when I read it. And I thought, you know, I really feel like reading that again. And so I picked it up like before the stream, started reading the first part of the first chapter. And I was like, oh my gosh, this book is so good already. So, yeah, so I might be rereading all the Vampire Chronicles again. Just because it's just so well written, so well, you know, so nice. And I like when I read books for fun, I tend to like horror and dark fantasy, stuff like that. Something that really transports me to a different world, essentially. I don't like to read something too normal, you know, if that makes any sense. So yeah, SS Normandy says, was Normandy highly flammable? I wouldn't say highly flammable, but there were materials used on Normandy that were flammable. But you see, the people who designed Normandy, as well as people who designed other ocean liners of Normandy's time, such as RMS Queen Mary, they knew that fires were a problem on ships. They've traditionally have always been a problem for ships. So they took extra steps to make the ships more fire safe. I can't speak directly about Normandy, but I'm pretty sure Normandy was very similar to fire safety to the Queen Mary. And for the Queen Mary, I know her fire safety. She had all kinds of really amazing safety systems used, you know, like over the years people developed new safety systems, and the Queen Mary would combine that into the ship. And so they had things like fire doors. So they actually had sections of the ship that would be blocked off with fire doors if a fire was detected. And the fire doors could also be activated manually in case of, you know, in case if the detectors weren't sensing fire, an officer or somebody in charge could, you know, press a lever or something, or push a lever or whatever, and then the fire doors would all shut at the same time. So it would block off areas of the ship so that way the fire couldn't spread too easily. The other thing about Queen Mary was she was made with a lot of asbestos. And I always have to warn people before I talk about asbestos, because I know that there's this huge thing, people are afraid of asbestos, and they really should be, kind of. But asbestos is not harmful if you do not disturb it. So usually asbestos is used as an ingredient or a piece of something. It's rarely ever just sitting right out in the open, so a breeze couldn't harm asbestos if it's in something. And it's very rare when you would just have asbestos laying around. You know what I mean? Like, they did it for some insulation in homes, but not for the Queen Mary. So the insulation on the Queen Mary was usually an ingredient. It was usually plaster or something with asbestos in it. But anyway, back to asbestos on the Queen Mary. So you know that Queen Mary is covered in all these beautiful wooden wall paneling pieces, right? Well, obviously wood can catch fire. That can be a problem. That was really hot and I just scalded myself. Oh my god. Okay, so So Queen Mary is made with a lot of wood wall paneling, and wood can catch fire. Well, the way that Queen Mary's wood wall paneling was made was that it was 4 layers in each panel, and it was a layer of normal, ordinary plywood, just very thin, like, you know, just a fraction of a centimeter. Then there was an equal-sized layer of asbestos, and then sandwiching that was another layer of cheap plywood, and then the fourth and final layer was a very thin sheet of the veneer of the wood. So I know a lot of people, they hear veneer and they think it's like fake wood, like to make it look like a cabinet is made of like a solid piece of wood. That's what we call veneers today, but back then veneer was literally a thin shaving of actual like wood. And veneers were usually a pricey wood because obviously you don't want to take something like, you know, like Makassar ebony, which is really rare, you know, and then make like whole like blocks of it as part of your ship. Like that would just be utterly expensive. So they shaved pieces of it into veneers, and then they would glue that onto the plywood. And so so the asbestos layer in the plywood would make it so if the wood paneling did catch fire, it would burn very, very slowly. It just, because it would be depraved of oxygen, and and the heat wouldn't spread to the other layer of the wood behind it as easily because the asbestos layer blocked it. So they did things like that, and then things like a lot of the door handles and latch knobs and things all over the ship, a lot of them were made of like Roanoid or Bakelite, and those materials, well, Bakelite in particular, it is made with asbestos. So they took asbestos and they mixed it in the layer of plastic. And that's what makes asbestos so hardy when it comes to heat. So you could open doors and things like that. Even if the door was like right next to a blazing fire, you wouldn't burn your hand. So they did things like, of course, the doorknob might melt, but then you'd know there was a fire on the other side of the door because the doorknob was melted. So, let's see. Mark says, I know I have mentioned once before, but I have a black Bakelite telephone from SS United States stateroom M70 in a case. Everyone comments it's so heavy and elegant. Oh, yeah, I imagine. It'd be so cool. Yeah, my friend Shiloh, he has one of those black telephones. It might be made of Bakelite as well, but I don't know if it was from a ship. He's in the chat, maybe he could tell me. But yeah. Granny Gaming says, what tea is it this time? It is Lady Grey. Emperor Hirohito says, have you heard of Okidoki or Doki Doki Literature Club? No. Aiden says, cheers. Thank you so much. Cheers. Christian says, why does UK people love tea so much? It's a really long history, but if I were to summarize it, basically they didn't always love tea. It was when their empire really expanded, and, you know, especially into places like India, where tea was, you know, something that they grew and drank, and tea was brought to the UK, to the upper class people, and the upper class people, they drank it because it was what upper class people did. You know, it was a fancy drink, and everybody wants to emulate upper class people, so that kind of trend spread to everybody, and then it became a thing where they had a tea culture, and every day at 4 p.m. they would have their tea, and sometimes they'd wake up and have tea. So, you know, tea was just like, it was traditional but ritualistic in a certain way, you know, because especially for the people who were working class, they would wake up early in the morning before work, and they'd have this kind of like big meal with a nice big cup of tea, and then they'd go to work, and then they'd have their next tea break at 4, and then they'd go home and, you know, and have like another big meal. Or was it the other way around? They'd have a big meal at night, and I don't remember. It's yeah, I'm still learning. Daniel says, hey, Alex, do you believe that the sunken ships like Titanic, Lusitania, Britannic, and MV Wilhelm Gustloff are still here, just underwater and deteriorating? I believe it. Transatlantic Scottish Line says, hello, do you know what the SS Cymric is? I've heard of Cymric, but I don't know much about it. A Fox says, your chat is way behind. I know, that's because I try to get to everybody. So... trying to skip ahead a bit. Sheridan says, finger sandwiches are sometimes referred to as boudoir sandwiches. Yep, that's true. Ryan Hines says, wouldn't it be cool if Disney built a Disneyland somewhere in South America or Australia? I don't think South America is a good idea. There are some areas where the culture doesn't really respond well to the Disney brand. And one of those places ended up being France. So when Disney was building France, they had this huge pushback because, you know, not everybody thinks the way Americans do. And Americans think everybody thinks the way they do. So they thought, well, we're going to put Disneyland here in Paris because it's cheaper than building it in the UK, but we'll still get all the UK customers. And so there was just this huge pushback. Disney still won the battle. They still built their park there, but it failed for decades because it just wasn't part of the culture. And South America is one of those places, you know, there's a lot of different countries there and there's a lot of different cultures. And while some of them may like to watch Disney movies, it wouldn't work well with the Americanized design of a Disney park. I'll give you an example. Disney has a dress code in their Disney parks. And a lot of the clothing that people wear in South America, because they're very casual people, it would not be permitted. And if it's not permitted, they would think that that's, you know, that's elitist, you know. But even worse than that, you know, my experience working at a Disney park, a lot of Brazilian people, for instance, if it was a hot day and they were in Tomorrowland and the water would be, you know, gushing up from the thing in because in Tomorrowland they had a water feature. They had to remove that from Disney parks. They used to have a lot of water features in Disney parks for hot days. They had to remove that because a lot of the South American people, especially the Brazilians, would end up taking off all their clothes and just, like, you know, dancing around in the water. And that is totally normal in South America. You know, people aren't as shy down there, but Americans are very prudish. So it just, you know, it was a shocker when that would happen. And I recall times that happened. I remember this one Brazilian guy. He jumped into the rivers of America completely naked and just swam around in it because it was a hot day. I was like, what is going on? So it's things like that. It doesn't work well at a Disney park, you know. So, but that's just clothing. There's other things too, you know. There's generally accepted ways of socializing in America, and then there's generally accepted ways of socializing in South America. And those things don't often mix well at a Disney park. So they would need something that's very much wholly their own for it to work. Disney kind of did it with Shanghai, but at Shanghai they had problems too, because the Chinese would come in to visit the Shanghai park, and I remember the first week they were having all kinds of trouble. You know, people weren't even using the public restrooms because they're not used to using public restrooms in a lot of places of China. Like, a lot of places of China, you can go miles and miles and miles and miles without seeing a public restroom. So they're used to just pulling over and using the bathroom. And so in the China park, they were having issues where people were literally relieving themselves in the bushes and, you know, and stuff like that. And people weren't used to queuing up in long lines in the way that Americans do. So the queues would actually, like, get all jumbled and backed up in weird ways because people weren't used to queuing up the way Americans queue up. So it was things like that that kind of ran into issues. And so I can see those same kinds of issues happening in South America. Gosh, I feel like I lost my place here. Where is it? Well, first, I'd like to thank Moonzer for the donation. Moonzer says, Alex, I'm 11 years old, and I have a question. How deep is the Queen Mary swimming pool? Oh, that's a good question. I want to say 8 feet at its deepest, 6 feet at its shallowest. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure 6 feet at its shallowest, 8 feet, or 10 feet at its deepest. Yeah. But it was a problem because they had a water slide, so it wasn't like literally water pouring down a water slide like we would have at a water park today. But they had a water slide. It was just a steel slide. And then there were 2 diving boards. And they had to remove the diving boards, because as the ship rolled in the seas, the water would shift, and it would get lower on one side or it would get higher on another. And as it did that, if someone dove down right as the water was moving underneath them and it moved out of the way, there would not be enough water underneath them to catch them. And they would dive, and then they would hurt themselves when they hit the bottom of the pool. Granted, they would still hit the water first, but it would not be enough water to catch them. So they ended up removing Queen Mary's diving boards within, I think, a year or 2 after her maiden voyage. And so ever since then, she's only had the water slide. And the water slide is fine because you don't have to jump up to get in the water like you slide down into it. So it's not so bad. But yeah, that was one of those things where I had to remove that. Okay, let's see. Back up to where I was. Sorry, I lost my place because as I was talking to the last person, the chat just went all the way to the bottom. Okay. Okay, read that part. Read that part. Okay, I'm back to where I was. Let's see. Daniel says, "Hi, hey Alex, I remember something you said about your apartment being haunted. What happened over there?" Okay, so I'll tell you. I'll tell you, but please, I know there's people who don't believe in ghosts. I understand that. Believe me. Believe me. I must first say that I don't believe everywhere is haunted. In fact, most people or not most people, but most places that are supposedly haunted, I end up going there and not believing a single word of it being haunted at all. You know, like, because certain places just, they're called haunted, but they're not. Like, I'm very skeptical, very, very skeptical. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in ghosts. I do. I've seen them myself a few times in my life, and I've had experiences in my life, but it's not constant. I don't want people to think like, oh, I'm constantly seeing ghosts everywhere. It's very rare. But my last apartment, not this one. This one's perfectly fine. You know, my friend Chris was joking the other day because I told him about the last apartment. He's like, you must see ghosts everywhere. I was like, no. I was like, literally, I've lived in this apartment for the whole year. Not a single weird thing has happened. You know, at least nothing I couldn't explain myself. So, you know, but the last apartment, my sister's apartment, is definitely haunted. And boy, I feel like I could go on and on about it. So we would see things when we first moved in there, because this is when we first moved up to Portland. And when we first came there, I was sharing, well, not sharing it. I was renting a room from my sister, So she and her husband, they had their own room on the other side of the apartment, and I had my room. And from the first night, it's like me and my brother-in-law noticed that there was weird stuff. Like, it was just kind of like a weird feeling. And then in our first month, we started seeing things. Particularly for me, it began as nightmares. It was really strange because I don't have nightmares. Like, I haven't had nightmares since I was a kid. I usually, if I dream, it's usually a good dream. So I was having nightmares when I first moved in there, and I thought, this is so weird. The nightmare was that I would wake up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and my bathroom was outside my bedroom, and so I would walk out of my room in the dream. The apartment is pitch black because, it's nighttime. And I would look over, because my bathroom I'd have to turn right, and to my left, looking down the hallway, was the living room. And I would turn to my left, and I would see a figure standing there. We have this big window that we close the blinds at night, but the light from the nearby street lamp lights up the window. So I could see the silhouette of a figure standing there. And at first it was just a figure. And then I would end up going into the bathroom, and then my dream would skip to me being back in bed or something. And as the nights progressed, the dream got weirder. The figure would get closer. And I just thought it was just this weird reoccurring dream that was happening. And then finally one day, and this is not a dream anymore, one day I actually do get up in the night to use the bathroom. And out of habit, I looked over into the living room, and there was a figure there. And immediately I flipped on the light, and there was nothing there. Nothing in front of the window at all. And I was like, okay, this dream is it's got to me, it's got to me. Because I'm very skeptical, very first and foremost. And I was just like, okay, that's just weird. The dream has just got me so riled up that I'm starting to see it now. But then it became more frequent. So I'd be in the living room, and I'd be watching TV or something, and I'd see something in the corner of my eye. I looked down the hallway, and there was a black figure that just walked past and went into my bedroom. And I would go and walk over, and there'd be nobody there by the time I got there. And so I just thought, oh my gosh, I must be losing it. I literally thought, I was like, I must be losing it if I'm seeing this. And it would be things like that, because it was way more. It was just way more stuff. Like the cats, my sister has 2 cats, and the cats would act all weird. They would suddenly both be looking at something, and they'd kind of just follow it. And then they'd see it come near me, and they just stand there staring. The 2 cats doing that. No flies, no nothing. I'm looking, I'm like, what are they looking at? And they're just slowly moving and watching it go towards me. Whatever it was things like that. But then one day, what made it so real was I was casually talking to my brother-in-law, and he goes, have you noticed anything weird, lately? I'm like, maybe, and he's like, I could swear, he's like, I've been having this nightmare where I see this dark figure, and I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, and he, and so he was like, it's just been really strange, and he's like, and then and then I went to the kitchen, and all the drawers and cupboards were open. I'm like, all of them? And he's like, yeah, and he goes, he's like, at first he thought it was the cats, but the cats will open one cabinet, but not all of them, especially since the cats can't reach certain cabinets in the kitchen. And so it was just really weird. And so I was like, okay, that's strange, and we just kind of brushed it off. But then it got really real when one day I had to go. It was one night I got up, instead of using the bathroom, I went to the kitchen to get a drink of water because I was so thirsty. Went into the kitchen, turned on the light, and I'm sitting there, I'm pouring myself a glass of water, and I look over into the living room, because the kitchen looks in the living room, and there's the dark figure. But this time I can see what it looks like because the light of the kitchen is shining on it. The dark figure was really tall, like a very tall man, dressed in all black with a black blazer, black shirt, black vest, black pants. Everything all black. Even the face was just completely blacked out. I'm not going to say black skin. It was just blacked out. And you couldn't really make out the face, couldn't make out... You could see a slight profile of the hairdo, but not much else. But you could see it was a black tailored suit. And it was modern. It was not old. It was modern. And I thought, that is too crazy. So we just had more and more instances where me and my brother-in-law would see this. My sister never saw a darn thing. Never. Until she did. And that was when, they were like sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden this bright light appeared on the couch next to them, and they both looked at it, and they were like keeping to themselves as they thought, that is really weird. What's this bright light? They thought like, I'm imagining it, but then it disappeared all of a sudden, and they kind of like looked at each other, and they're like, you saw that too, didn't you? And they're like, yeah, So they started seeing stuff, but she never saw the dark figure. So it was kind of bothering me for a while. And I was like, I need to know what this is. So, my sister is the manager of the complex. I said, I was like, did anybody die in our apartment? Because this figure comes into my room at night. I can feel the presence. It was really weird. It was very much an unforgettable feeling of not being alone in the room. And she was like, no, nobody's died in our apartment at all, And then, like, the next day, she's like, I went to look into things, and she's like, I did discover, though, that the person below our apartment did die. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah. And she's like, I can't reveal who it was. It's not, that's not, acceptable or whatever, And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this myself. So I just went and did a bunch of research. I found out that the person, there was a person in the apartment below us, and it's really fuzzy as to whether they died in the apartment or outside the apartment. But the thing was here's the kicker. The person was a tall man, and he wore a business suit every day. Because his job was, he was the manager of a sports team. I don't want to reveal exactly what sports team or whatever. He traveled, that's for sure. He traveled, but he did die in the Portland area. And so, I don't know if he was the manager of a sports team, but he was somebody important to the sports team, that's for sure. And so, yeah. Yeah, he died in the, he lived in the apartment below us, but he did die at a young age. He was a very young man. Was not an old man at all. And, I looked up his information. I found his name and everything. And I was just like, this is the guy. This is the guy. I brought my brother-in-law in to see, and he's like, that's him. That's it, My sister thought it was silly. She's like, no, come on, But then I will say one last thing. When I moved out of that apartment, I moved into this one. I was here for a couple months when my brother-in-law, I went to visit them at their apartment, and he told me, he's like, your sister saw him. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, she saw him. I'm like, how? And he told me, he said that, so my sister, well, she actually told me, because she walked in the room, and he's like, oh, tell him what you saw. And so she was cooking dinner in her kitchen, and her husband was asleep in the living room. She turns around to put something in the oven. She sees something in the corner of her eye slowly walking past. She closes the oven and looks over, and she sees the dark figure wearing the suit walking into the hallway, much like I used to see. And so she was like, that's weird. Like, why is my husband, like, dressed up and walking through the hallway? Like, he was just asleep a second ago. So she stands up and she turns around, and her husband was asleep on the couch, like, just, like, completely snoring, just asleep. And she realized there was someone else in the house. And so, like, you know, she, like, walked over into the hallway. She saw the shoulder of the person walking into my former bedroom, and she followed it, and it went into the bedroom, and she went in after it, turned on the light, and there was nothing there. She believed us after that. So there was a lot of stories, like a lot of things that happened over the course of the 2 years I lived in that apartment, like a lot of things, but those were the ones that really stood out. And yeah, but I lived in this apartment for almost a year, and, you know, or maybe a little over half a year, but still not a single thing, not a single thing here. Feels totally fine. So I don't see ghosts wherever I go, but when I do see them, it's just, it becomes this undeniable thing. So yeah, it was really weird. I'm sorry I went on a whole tangent about ghosts, but it was a good question. Robert says, is this an original poster? No, it's a reproduction, and it's a smaller reproduction. Let's see. Sorry, I'm skipping through comments. I don't absolutely need to talk, because I talked for so long that I'm sure people have been commenting and want to say something. Janine says, your train is marvelous. Thank you. I actually wanted to see if anybody noticed. No squeaking. The locomotive that is pulling the train right now is the one that I've been nicknaming Mr. Squeaky, because it normally squeaks a lot. Well, guess what I did, folks? I went and spent the money and bought a special, it's an electrically conductive lubricant. So it's designed for very specifically the problem that this engine had, which was that the contact points that picked up electricity were what was causing the squeaking. So I went and bought that, and then before we started the stream, I put that on. No squeaking through the whole 1 hour we've been doing this so far. It's so nice. Because this is my favorite locomotive. The smaller one, which is put away, it's over in the corner. I like it, but it's really small and it can't haul the heavy passenger train. So having the bigger locomotive there, my favorite one anyway, it's nice to have it finally running and not worrying if it's, like, literally going to be scratching the axle right off the wheels, you know. And it's running perfectly, so I'm very happy with that. Doc says, thanks for answering my question about narrated tours. I really hope you know how talented you are at the narration. Oh, thank you so much. RMS Gigantic says, how old is RMS Queen Mary? RMS Queen Mary depends on what you mean by old. If you're asking about, like, the oldest part of the Queen Mary, her keel was laid down in the year 1930. So you could say that she is 92 years old. But if you're talking in terms of, like, when she had her maiden voyage, which is in 1936, you know, she's 80... I can't do the math in my head. 80-something. So, yeah. Wyatt says, there's a reason why the Queen Mary has not been issued as a national monument. There is no reason. It's never been applied for. So no one's ever applied to make the Queen Mary National Monument. That's really the only reason. Because a national monument it has to be approved by either the president or Congress. So when you apply for a national monument status, it has to be either approved by the president or Congress. And it's a long process that takes years, like years and years. They've never applied for it before. And so they're thinking about putting together an application process for that. But that doesn't mean it will be. And, you know, you might think, oh, that's wonderful, because if it is, it'll be so well taken care of. Not necessarily. You know, national monuments, a lot of times to save money, the way that they do things is they go, what is the most important thing we should save about this item? And then they'll focus on that. So if the Queen Mary does become a national monument, you know, they might choose to preserve certain aspects of the ship while neglecting the rest. An example of that, and this does not mean like it's gonna be, but an example of that would be, since it would be a national monument, they wouldn't be able to operate it as a hotel anymore, so all the original staterooms would not be in use. So because of that, they may decide to only preserve a certain amount of staterooms, the most important ones, and preserve those, but then let the rest degrade, because it would be way too much money to constantly maintain, especially if there were like issues of like water leaks and stuff from the rain. So that's why. Lightning McQueen says, if you could travel back in time, what time period would you go back to? I wouldn't want to be there permanently, but the 1930s, yeah. About mid-1930s. I definitely want to be aboard the Queen Mary for, you know, either her maiden voyage or the voyage right after. That's for sure. But I wouldn't want to stay there. I wouldn't want to stay in any time period, to be honest, because I wouldn't fit in. Like, as much as I love these time periods, I wouldn't fit in. Not permanently. I'd probably be like, you know, like burned at the stake or something as a heretic or something. As this Remedy says, why was Olympics Grand Staircase painted green? That's actually a really good question. So the reason why at one point they painted Olympics Grand Staircase green was because of the problem of ships becoming old. So ships are like time capsules. You build them in a certain time frame. They are modern for that time frame, but as the years go by, they retain that year, that design of that year. And the thing is that by the time the 1930s rolled around, Olympic was no longer this sleek, beautiful, modern ocean liner. She was this antiquated, dusty, you know, Edwardian era ship. People in the 1930s did not want to associate with the Victorian or Edwardian eras. You know, to them, it was like an enigma, because the ideals of the old world had died out. They didn't want to be associated with the old world. They were the new, modern people of the Art Deco era. So, for that reason, the ship became really antiquated and really old-looking, and it would have been really, really expensive to retrofit the entire ship to look 1930s modern. So one of the things they did to kind of make the ship look more modern was they used the mint green to paint the staircase. And mint green was a popular color in the 1930s. So they painted the staircase mint green. And, but it was like putting a Band-Aid on like a flesh wound, like a massive flesh wound. So it didn't help, but They did what they could, you know. But the thing is, you know, I was saying it in my recent video about New Orleans, because I talked about the history of New Orleans in that video. And I was saying that the whole reason why New Orleans faced this issue of, like, the French Quarter almost facing the issue of being demolished was because there was a fine line between antique and antiquated, as well as a fine line between historic and outdated. And so today we look at things like the French Quarter or the Queen Mary or Olympic as things that we should preserve and save, and, you know, because it's old, it's historic, it's beautiful. But back then it wasn't like that. To them it was like looking at a rundown house from the last decade. It was not at all worth saving to them. And so it's the same thing today. If you walk past a building that was built in 1995 and the building is getting old and worn out, your first thought is not to, like, save and preserve that building. To you, it's not old. To you, it means nothing. It's just a building from 1995. But the thing is that you know, how could you possibly know that 90 years from now or 100 years from now, someone's going to go, oh, they should have preserved that building. It's historic. You didn't know. You know, to you, it was just a building from the last couple decades that just was old and needed to be torn down. And so it was the same thing with ocean liners. It was the same thing with, you know, the French Quarter of New Orleans. It was like, as people came into the modern age, those buildings weren't that old to them. And instead, they were just outdated, ugly, dilapidated structures. Same thing with Olympic. A lot of people are like, dude, there are better ocean liners out there right now. We got Normandy, we got Queen Mary, we got all that. You know, we don't need ships like Olympic, you know. So that's why. That's why there were weird things like that where they tried to destroy a lot of old stuff back then. Let's see. Emperor Aquatania says, could you start a reaction channel? I don't react to things, actually. I literally have a blank face when I'm watching something, so I have no I just never have, you know, like, and a lot of the people that do reaction channels, they really play it up a bit, because even they're not that animated when they see stuff for the first time. So, yeah, I would not make for a good reaction channel. Ryan Hines, to answer your question about the scariest ghost story I had working at Disney, you'd have to see my videos about my Disney ghost stories. Yeah, Tyler, that's a scary dream. Oh, so Cunard asks, how long before we moved into that apartment did the neighbor below die? 2 months. Yes. The person who died, who lived below us, who haunted my room, had died just 2 months before we moved in. And, you know, the thing is as scared as I was at times of that ghost, because there would be times like, because, you know, I'm sitting on my computer chair right now, but in the other apartment, I would have my computer in front of me, I'd be typing up a script for a new video, and I'd sit there and write, and I'd sit there and be like, okay, done that sentence, and I'd lean back, right? And right as I leaned back, I saw a torso right next to me. I looked over, I could see a black belt buckle, trousers, a tucked shirt, the edge of a jacket, and it just faded out. It was gone. And I was like, whoa. You know, it was standing right next to me. And so at times I was really afraid. But after I learned who it was, this person was a very nice person. Like, a very, like, you know, like, their family loved them. Their friends loved them. They were a good, nice person. I started to get the feeling, I don't think that if he was haunting me, I don't think he was trying to scare me. He did die in a very sudden way. I don't know how he died. I don't want to speculate because I think that might be a bit rude. But I don't know how he died, but I think he died in a very sudden way. And I think that he just was alone, honestly. I don't want to go as far as to say, like, he had a message or anything. Like, I don't think that's what it was. I think that, and this goes over into the crazy side, because now I'm just speculating. Has nothing to do with what I saw, but I got the feeling that the person wasn't trying to scare me. They didn't know what really happened to them. They didn't know what was going on with them. And I think that they were lonely and they just kind of wanted me to know who they were, you know, and just to know that they exist, I guess. I think that's what I would want. I think if I was a ghost and, you know, obviously you can't talk to the people you love and the people you know because they don't know you're around. I would want someone to know I still exist, you know? Like, I would want to tell someone, like, hey, I know I'm dead, but I'm still around, you know? I think that's all he really wanted, because he didn't try to scare me. It's just that he scared me because he was in the house, and he scared my brother-in-law and my sister because he was in the house, but I don't think he was trying to haunt us. And the funny thing was I wondered, I'm thinking, if he died in the apartment below, why was he in my apartment? And I think I understood that when we moved in, no one was living below. Nobody. It was empty. So when we moved in, I think that we were the only people nearby. And he had just freshly died. I hate to put it that way. He had just freshly died, and he wanted someone to know he was still there. I think that's why he came up to our apartment. Now, my friend asked me, he goes, did you ever talk to the neighbors who did move in below afterwards? Did you ever talk to them and say, like, hey, have you seen anything? I told my friend, I was like, we never asked them if they saw a ghost down there, because for one thing, what do you do? You just knock on the door and be like, hey, I'm your upstairs neighbor. Have you seen a ghost lately? Like, you know, like, that's just, like, weird. So we never asked them. But what I do know is that late at night, the family that lived below us, their kids, their bedroom was on the opposite side below our apartment. And when they were like, you know, at nighttime, the kids would play around and stuff. You could hear them giggling and laughing, you know, and the parents' bedroom was below mine. I know, because you never heard the kids giggling and laughing in the room below mine. So, you know, parents, they like to have the room to themselves, so separated. But at night, sometimes it'd be late at night and all of a sudden you'd hear the children screaming. Middle of the night, out of complete silence, the children would scream their heads off. And then you'd hear them run into the room below mine, the parents' room, and then everything would be quiet. And that would happen occasionally. Not all the time, but occasionally. And, you know, my brother-in-law heard it too. I think the kids saw the ghost. I think the kids saw the ghost. And, yeah, it was just weird. And we didn't want to ask them. We didn't want to, like, bring it up because it would just be really creepy, you know. And what if they did see a ghost and we were like, hey, you know, have you seen a ghost? They might be like, wait a minute, are you the person that's scaring our kids? You know, like, I didn't want to bring any of that up, so we didn't do that. But, oh gosh, yeah, that was, I've never lived in a house that was that haunted. My great-grandmother, her apartment was a little bit spooky, you know. Her dolls, she had a collection of dolls, and you'd go to sleep and they were all arranged in a certain way. You'd wake up and they're rearranged. Creepy. But that was the extent of it in my grandmother's apartment. But living at that apartment, just last year and the year before that, like, it was just scary. But I don't think he meant to be scary. Emperor Aquitania says, your chat is way behind. Yes, I know. It's not because of YouTube. It's because I'm trying to get to everybody's comment, and everybody's commenting faster than I can respond. So I'm trying to skip comments, but I don't want people to feel like I'm skipping them. Like, I try to read as many comments as I positively can. So, Mark says, did you ever ask the ghost questions or ask him to leave? I never asked him questions. But when I did find out who he was, I did get the feeling that he was in the room. And so I just kind of said, I know who you are. That's all I said. But, I mean, I never, asked questions. I think my grandmother, who was an ordained minister, when I was a little kid and I'd be afraid, I'd wake up in the middle of the night with a nightmare or whatever, and she and I would have conversations about ghosts and whatever, and she was an ordained minister, so her natural instinct was to tell me, don't talk to them, because you're inviting that in if you talk to them. So I don't think the ghost that was in the apartment was bad, but I grew up being told not to talk to them, so I didn't. So, and I still don't. When I do think that there might be a ghost around, I don't actively speak to them. Again, it's just rooted deep in me, like, don't invite that in. So, because you don't know who that is. I mean, it's and I think you could make that akin to, like, if a stranger comes knocking on your door, you don't just go, oh, come inside. Like, you don't know them. Like, you ask them, who are you? What's going on? But, well, then again, that's not a good example because, again, you don't talk to ghosts. But you get what I'm trying to say here. So, Giannine says, please do discuss paranormal activity. I don't like to do that very often. I'm not a paranormal enthusiast at all. I was recently invited, someone from a paranormal community said, hey, I saw your videos about Disneyland's ghosts and stuff like that. They said, we would love to invite you onto our podcast so you can talk about your experiences and then come to our convention and you can speak there live. And I was really flattered, but I told them, I was like, I'm not a paranormal enthusiast. Most of the time when people tell me a ghost story, most of the time I'm not inclined to believe it. A lot of it is very made up, and then most of the time when I go to a haunted place, I'm not fully convinced it's haunted. Like the Queen Mary, I have friends, and my friends are watching right now. They have experienced something. I'm not going to discount what they say, but I've never experienced it. I've been to the Queen Mary a few times in my life, not a lot, I'll admit. I've never stayed overnight there. I've been to the Queen Mary a few times in my life, but I've never got the feeling that it was haunted. I never got the feeling that I wasn't alone, really. So I just, it's things like that. And plus the other thing, too, is that if the Queen Mary is haunted, I don't want to draw more attention to that, because there is a problem happening with the Queen Mary, which is that the Queen Mary has this incredible history, amazing, multifaceted history that is being completely overshadowed by the fact that people want to see ghosts. And so, it got to the point where, like, my friend Steve, he was a tour guide there. He was talking about how, people he'd talk to them about the amazing history of the ship, and they'd just be like, oh, what about the ghosts? Like, they didn't care about the history. They wanted to hear the ghost stories. And to me, that becomes a problem. That's why I don't discuss ghosts very much on my channel, because it overshadows the stuff I'm more passionate about. I have had ghost experiences in the past, but I don't want that to overshadow the history of the things I love. So that's why I don't discuss it very much. You know, during Halloween season, you might see me post a thing or two. Like this Halloween season, I have a history video I'm going to post that happens to kind of be a ghost story. And I'm really excited to do it because it is historical, but it falls into the realm of spooky. So I thought that'd be fun for Halloween. So, but that's pretty much the extent of it. I don't want to be the person that kind of talks about ghosts all the time. Yeah, no more squeaky. It's finally been oiled. Shibert says, hard to believe that Queen Elizabeth II is older. Queen Elizabeth II, as in the QE2? QE2 is younger than Queen Mary. The QE2 was launched in 1969. Queen Mary was launched in 1936. So, yeah, QE2 is far younger than Queen Mary. Oh, Joseph says, hello, Alex. Thank you for answering my friend Gianine's train comment. Oh, well, that's... Yeah, you're welcome. Never read... Okay, let's see. Sorry, I know I'm behind on the comments, so I'm just trying to go fast over them. Daniel says, hey Alex, what Cunard ship would you like to see rebuilt other than Queen Elizabeth? Mauretania. Yeah. From 1907. Let's see. Hobgoblin says, Alex, how do you know these ghosts aren't just visual hallucinations? You know, people do hallucinate. I've had hallucinations before, that's for sure. You know, and I actually did discuss this. I have a video, and I think you might like it, because I do discuss this in it. And but it's called, Is the Queen Mary Really Haunted? And in that video, I discuss some of the stories. I didn't want it to be a debunking video, because frankly, it would just take too long. But I did debunk a few of the things in there about the Queen Mary's hauntings. And the point of the video was, you know, when we talk about the Queen Mary, what is real, what isn't? And so in the video, I talk about how, like, certain characters on the Queen Mary are absolutely positively not real. And the fact that people think they see them is an interesting part of psychology. Because, like, for instance, Jackie in the swimming pool. Everybody says, oh, this little girl named Jackie died in the swimming pool of the Queen Mary, and now you can see and hear her in the swimming pool. Well, the thing is that, according to the story, Jackie died in the second-class swimming pool, not the first-class swimming pool. So what is she doing in the first-class swimming pool? And second of all, Cunard kept impeccable records of people's accidents and deaths aboard their ships. Impeccable records. There is no record of a child ever drowning on the Queen Mary at all. There's no record of any adult ever drowning on the Queen Mary, for that matter. The other thing, too, is that children were not allowed in the pool rooms. They just weren't. It was adults only. Children were not allowed in the pool rooms. So why would there be a little girl haunting the swimming pool of the Queen Mary? And, you know, the other thing, too, is that there is a book, and I don't remember which one. I don't read them. But there's a book that has been sold on the Queen Mary up until the Queen Mary closed in 2020. And it's about the origin stories of the ghosts on the Queen Mary. And it specifically had a quote from a Disney person, a person from the Disney company who helped revitalize the ship during the era that Disney was on the ship. The person talked about how they made up these ghost stories. They made up room B340. You know, B340 started off as a special effects room. It was full of Disney special effects to scare people. And so, you know, but Jackie was one of those stories that was made up by Disney. In essence, she is a Disney character. And people go into the pool to this day and they report seeing and hearing her. And, you know, the thing is either those people are lying or they are hallucinating that they are seeing her, because it is part of our human psychology. If you tell someone some place is haunted, they will think that place is haunted and they will see those hauntings. So you ask a good question. How do you know these ghosts aren't just visual hallucinations? Well, I think some of them could be. I'm not going to lie. Some of them could be. On my part, could it be? Yeah, I think some of them could be. It's where other people see what I see that I start to think, okay, at least this is real. Because how could, like, when I told my story about like when my sister and her husband saw this glowing light on their couch, they both saw it at the same time. And it was this weird ball of light, you know, like, you know, and it was nighttime. Like, it's not like the sun was streaming in, you know, like, so, but they both saw it. And, you know, and then the fact that, like, you know, my brother-in-law and me both saw the same figure, and the figure very specifically was tall with, like, combed hair and, like, and wore a suit. And then I find out that the person who died 2 months before we moved in, on the apartment below us, was tall, combed hair, suit. All the time, because that was their job. They needed to wear a suit. Like, you know, both me and my brother-in-law saw this exact figure on separate occasions before we told each other. So it's things like that that I'm like, that can't be a hallucination. How did two different human brains have the same exact hallucination at both the same times and different times before they know about it? You know, and then there's the other story that I talked about in my Disneyland videos about working there. There was one story where I talked about the first time I ever actually, like, saw a ghost, like an actual ghost materialized in front of us, was when my coworker and we were working the closing shift at the Golden Horseshoe restaurant. And we would watch as the people would slowly file out of the restaurant. It was closing shift, so everybody, like, the restaurant was closed, people would finish eating, they would leave. And the last family was sitting upstairs. So me and my friend, we go up there, we're, like, you know, tying up a trash bag, and, you know, and she's kind of just sweeping a little bit. We get to talking to each other because, you know, our boss wasn't watching, so we're just kind of, like, chit-chatting in the corner. We're just watching the last family. It's a man and wife, their son, and their daughter. And they're all four of them are sitting at this table having the dinner together, and they're discussing, you know, they're discussing with their son, like, the things that they're going to do next. They're going to go back to their hotel, blah, blah, blah. So me and my coworker are talking, and we get on the subject about ghosts. We talk about, there's this little girl that is said to haunt the stage, and we have both seen evidence of the little girl. She rustles the curtains on the stage of the restaurant, and she can be heard running across the stage back and forth and back and forth. So we're talking about all the different instances that she has experienced seeing evidence of the ghost, me seeing the evidence of the ghost of the little girl. And next thing you know, like, the little girl from the family, she looks over and she's, like, listening to us. And then she walks over to us and she comes up to us and she goes, "Excuse me, but is this place haunted?" And my coworker and I look at each other like, oh no, she overheard us. She, you know, we made her think this place is haunted, and, you know, so my friend was like, no, honey, like, this place is not haunted. Like, why would you think that? And the little girl says, "'Cause I think I just saw a ghost." And we're like, oh, that's weird. But we're like, no, no, no. Like, it's not haunted. It's okay, you know, like. And she goes back and sits down. And, you know, the family is still taking a while. We have a rule that we can't tell them to leave. So my coworker and I go downstairs. You know, we close the doors of the restaurant to make sure, like, nobody else walks in. Because at that point, it was midnight. We have to keep the doors closed at midnight. And we'll just wait for the family to come down. So my coworker and I are still chatting. She's on one side of the door. I'm on the other side of the door. I'm tying up a trash bag. She's tying up a trash bag. And, you know, and then I see the father, the mother, and the son come down the stairs. And they start heading out the door. And they're like, thank you, you know. And they're heading out the door. And I was like, oh, you're welcome. I'm like, wait, where's your daughter? And they stop and they're like, we don't have a daughter. And my coworker and I look at each other like, you don't? And they're just like, no. You know, and I was like, oh, you know, my bad, you know, and told them, like, have a good night. And the three of them left. We shut the door behind them and we ran upstairs. There's a stairway on one side, stairway on the other. We ran up the stairs on both sides, looked around. No little girl upstairs. There's nowhere else the little girl could have gone. And the family said they didn't have a daughter. And when we thought back on it, we're like, you know what? They never talked to their daughter when they were sitting with her. They didn't acknowledge her when she got up to speak to us. They didn't even know she got up to speak to us. They were still talking to their son. And she was a solid little girl. Solid. That's one of those things where I'm like, I did not hallucinate that. My friend did not hallucinate that. We both saw something at the same exact time, and it interacted with us. So we saw the little girl that haunted the Golden Horseshoe. That was one of the craziest times that was the first time I ever saw a ghost. And I was 18 years old. Fun Edit says, Alex, what's your favorite song? My favorite song is Foundations of Decay by My Chemical Romance. Ryan Hine says, how much did the train models cost? It really depends. It's not like a flat price. But if you're asking, like, how much all the train models cost altogether, I don't think I could answer that. It was a lot of money, I'll admit. It took years to buy this stuff because it's a lot of money. The locomotive, the big one, the one I used to call Mr. Squeaky, I got that for a cheap price because the guy didn't admit to me that it didn't work when he sold it to me. He said it did. And I thought, oh, wow, he's selling it for an awfully cheap price. He was selling it for $160. That was really cheap. That was half of what it was worth. Half. So I found out after I got it, it didn't work. So I had to actually fix it and make it work. So things like that, you know. The smaller engine, I got that for $150. So that was brand new, right from the box. Each of these train cars, well, these four that are passing me by were part of a set that I bought, which was $130. I bought each of the freight cars separately. I bought the caboose separately. The caboose was $35. I bought each of the gondola cars separately. Each of those were $30. But I got a good deal on the box cars because the box cars were being sold by an old man who was selling off his extra stuff. The box cars were quite beat up. They needed new couplers and everything. So I got them each for $10. So $30. The track is ironically the most expensive thing on this layout. I needed to have a total of... let's see. 12 pieces of track. Each piece is 3 feet long. So each piece of track is 3 feet long. 12 pieces of track. That was a total of $300. And then the switch tracks, that was also probably another $300 because when you add up the amount of switch tracks altogether, the switch tracks are each like 45, 50, $55. It's expensive. And that's why ever since I first introduced you guys to this, you've seen pretty much no progress on it. It costs a lot of money, and that's why it takes a lifetime to complete it. So, yeah, because it just costs so much money. Let's see. Mark says, I agree. Queen Mary has sadly been commercialized by hauntings. Sure, I believe there are entities, but her history is rich and interesting without ghosts. My first visit to Queen Mary in 1980s were commercial free. Mm-hmm. Eric says, what do you think of the American Star? The one ship that ran aground in Port of Ventura? The ship that split in two and the bow stood for years. I know that one. I was researching that one when I was doing my video about the other casino ship, the SS Rex. I have a video about that. So it's the casino ship, for those of you who want to know, not the SS Rex, the Italian liner. Yeah, I ended up researching the one in Ventura and the one in San Diego when I was doing that. It's interesting, but I thought the SS Rex story was more interesting. Joseph says, there is a little girl haunting the Disneyland Hotel. She is named the Peppermint Girl because you can smell peppermint before you see her. Wow. Jeez. You know what? That makes a lot of sense. I spent a lot of time in the Disneyland Hotel when I was younger, and there were times I'd walk through like the lobby or walk through like one of the buildings, and I'd suddenly smell peppermint out of nowhere. And I thought, that is really strange. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Everybody's all, oh my gosh, your ghost stories are scary. Yeah, they are. It's because I don't have very many ghost stories in my life. I don't consider myself particularly subjective to ghosts. Like I don't see them everywhere, you know. I don't possess any psychic medium powers, but you know, I'm a very skeptical person by nature. I know that sounds weird because I'm talking about ghosts, but I grew up with a really technical mind. I analyze things. You know, I love building stuff, so I know how things work. I worked as a maintenance person for years for Hilton, for a restaurant I worked for an apartment complex. So as a maintenance person, I know how stuff works. You know, I know what can cause hallucinations, especially if you have a gas house, you know. Like if you have like I say gas house, but I mean like gas lines in your house can actually cause hallucinations. Just as a quick side note, my sister's apartment there's no gas in that apartment. There's no gas in any of our apartments. It's all electric. So it's not that. So I look at things from a technical standpoint and I go, how can I explain this? You know, so most of the time when I do think I see something weird, like there's times where I could swear I set something down on my bed, right? And I go into another room and I come back and it's actually sitting on my desk. And I'm like, oh, that's creepy. And I, you know, but naturally I get creeped out. But then the analytical side of me is like, okay, well, let's walk through this. What did I do? Did I really put this thing there? And then I suddenly remember, oh, wait, I did do this thing over here, and that distracted me. I wanted to put the item on the bed, but I put it on my desk instead on my way to the bathroom. So things like that. I'm very analytical, and I'm skeptical first. So, you know, I think part of that is because when I was a kid, my friends would tell me these really outlandish stories. For instance, here's a Disneyland one for you guys. One of my friends was telling me that they loved the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland. But one time, they were riding the ride, and right as they were going through the dart room, you know, where the darts shoot at you, the air, you know, hits you, and they said, oh, I got a dart stuck in my ear one time. And immediately I'm like, you got a dart stuck in your ear? Like, as a little kid, I was skeptical. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, you really think that they would actually shoot real darts at the passengers? Like, so as a little kid, people would tell me these outlandish stories, and I always wanted to, like, prove whether they were right or wrong. But the other thing too, and this might be cool, have you guys heard of it's an American show. It's called Fact or Fiction. And it was hosted by, I forget his name, the actor that was on the Star Trek TV show. He played one of the officers underneath Captain Picard. Anyway, he hosted the show. It's called Fact or Fiction. And what they would do is, my grandma and I would watch this. They would tell you a ghost story or a creepy story of some kind. And then they'd say, what do you think? Was it fact or fiction? And then they'd tell you another story. And I think after 3 stories, at the very end of the show, they'd say, now let's go through the stories. And then they kind of re-go through one story at a time. And then they analyze the details. And they say, it was fact for this reason. Or it was fiction for that reason. And so it was an analytical story. So even as a little kid, I'd always think, like, is what this person telling me fact or fiction? So I've always been kind of like that. Eric says, I never understood why model railroading is such an expensive hobby. Capitalism. I'm not against capitalism, but capitalism does have its downsides, I gotta admit. Because the companies that make this stuff, they go, you know, unless they buy from a model railroad builder, they can't buy this stuff anywhere else. So we can charge whatever we want. Now, some of these companies, they charge fair prices, but fair is still sometimes very expensive. You know, so there's some companies that I really respect because they give you a fair price. It's just that what they made you was expensive to produce, so it costs a lot of money. But other times there are some things I'm just like, that doesn't need to be that expensive, you know, but it's expensive because they can, you know. History on Boats is leaving. See you later. Let's see. Ryan says, Alex, what would be the one thing you would want Small World to do? Update and add more countries or remove the Disney characters? Neither. Neither, really. I like both. I mean, I've always felt that Small World never needed the Disney characters. Never did. But they're also kind of cute, so I don't see a reason why they should go. You know, I'm not that much of a purist. So I really wouldn't want to do anything to Small World. I think it's fine as it is. Daniel says, have you ever heard the fake legend of Walt Disney being frozen? When I was a kid, it really scared me. It's fake, you guys. It's fake. I think that story was started by Ward Kimball. And Ward Kimball was an animator for Walt, good friend of Walt Disney's. He loved to joke, right? Like, he was the one that made up that rumor that Walt Disney didn't like women, because he was talking to an interviewer, and the interviewer was like talking something about villains, like, oh, how amazing Disney villains are, and Ward Kimball joked, he's like, oh, have you noticed that they're all women, you know? and so the person joked with him, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, Walt hated women, you know, like, and then that went into text. and then the text became everyone's fact. They're like, oh, look, he said it. Walt hated women. Like, it was just like, oh, geez, you know. So yeah, Ward Kimball is also one of those people. He's like, he along the lines. It was either Ward Kimball or it was what's his name, John Hench, because he also was a big joker. John Hench famously made up stories, but that's because that's who he is. He loved to overplay stuff. That was his character. You know, but he did make up stories, and so those stories became legend. But I wouldn't doubt if it was John Hench, but I think it was Ward Kimball who was joking. They're like, oh yeah, you know, they keep him right underneath pirates, you know, so because you know, he made up the joke that he was frozen. And people started taking that as fact because it just so happened that the next year after Walt died, you know, the first person ever became cryogenically frozen. So... Tyler says, I love ghost stories, but what I find interesting is that you like vampires and I like zombies. Just imagine me in leather jacket and a barbed wire baseball bat named Lucille. Yeah, yeah, my dad was the one that got me into vampires when I was a kid. So I do really like vampires. Not the Twilight series, though. But yeah. It also has to do, too, with my love for New Orleans. You know, I've been doing a lot of research over the years about New Orleans. They have all these cool stories, you know. The casket girls of the Ursuline convent, you know. So... History and Book says, never mind, I can't sleep. Yeah, all these ghost stories. Conrad says LeVar Burton. No, not LeVar Burton. It's, not William Shatner. Is it Jonathan Frakes? Let's see. It might be Jonathan Frakes. Let's type it in. Jonathan Frakes. Is it him? Yes, the host was Jonathan Frakes. Yeah, that was the host of Fact or Fiction. Watched that as a kid with my grandma. We loved that show. Fun Edits is leaving. See you later, Fun Edits. Granny Gaming says, not all Disney villains are women. Well, that's true, but at the time the interview was conducted, this was like decades before Aladdin came out as a movie. This wasn't like, you know, recently. This was decades before. So, but even then, there were male villains. So that's why it was a joke. Like, some people take it seriously. They're like, oh, Walt Disney did hate women. Look, all his villains are women. It's like, well, what about his second movie, Pinocchio, where the villains were men and the woman that like saved the day was the Blue Fairy? You know, so people, they'll take what they want and they'll apply it to how they feel. So A Fox says, man, you are so cool. Keep it up. You are my idol. Don't idolize me. I am not perfect. You know, and I want people to know that, because there's a lot of people on YouTube and they come off as really nice, really bubbly people. But in reality, they're not quite so. A lot of YouTubers, they they're like actors, right? They produce stuff that entertains you. That's their job. You know, that's how they're popular. So you could look at it like an actor would, you know. The actor that's portraying the character is not necessarily how the actor is in real life. So a lot of YouTubers are that way. Not all of them, thankfully, but a lot of them are that way. And it's always been my goal to never blur those lines. I think that if my friends and family were to have a say-so, they would say that I'm the same person on camera as I am in real life. At least I hope they'd say that, because I try not to be any different, but I have my flaws. You know, I will admit some of my flaws are sometimes I get paranoid, you know, about the people that, you know, I hold dear. I worry about, you know, whether or not, you know, they're gonna be loyal to me or whatever. You know, I have temper issues sometimes. I get really angry, and, you know, thankfully I don't like do anything horrible, but, you know, I do have temper issues and stuff like that. So I am not at all a perfect person. So I don't want people to feel like I am like the best person in the world. I always try to do my best, though. I'm always looking for new ways to improve myself and be a better person. And so, yeah, you know, so, but yeah, don't idolize me. Ryan Hines, yeah, I would agree the Disney characters are kind of like cool Easter eggs. LMG Vids, he can vouch for me. Would you say I'm the same person off camera that I am on camera? I ask as I wonder what he's going to say about me next. He's probably going to be like, no, you're horrible. He's going to be like, Alex is a jerk. Eric says, I can also vouch for you, buddy. No, thanks, Eric. I've known Eric for so long now. It's crazy, like... OMG Vid says no comment. To Joe, yes, I do miss Tommy's a lot. Where I lived in Orange County, I think it's the LA area, but this restaurant's been spreading out, so they might be in more places, but growing up, there was this restaurant in Southern California called Tommy's Chili, and so my dad and I would go there all the time and get Tommy's Chili, and I wanted to get some before I moved out of California 2 years ago, because I didn't know the next time I'd have some, and I didn't do it, and so now I'm kind of like, oh, I miss having Tommy's Chili. Like, it's so terrible. It's not at all good for your body, but it's really tasty. Ryan says, have you ever been to In-N-Out Burger before? If so, what would you get there? It's a popular burger joint in California. Yeah, I mean, I lived in California. It started out as a popular burger joint in Southern California, and that's where I grew up. So I grew up eating In-N-Out all the time. And what I got there was I always got the number 2 animal style with animal fries. And when I was a kid, I always had that with like a small like strawberry strawberry shake. As I grew older and became more lactose intolerant, I couldn't drink the shakes anymore. But yeah, so that's still my thing. So they recently built the first In-N-Out here in Oregon. I think it's in Eugene. I want to say Eugene, Oregon. And they built the first one there, and immediately, day one, like, there was a line down the freeway for it. Oh, jeez. Eric, you're gonna start rumors. Eric's like, Alex is one of the greatest people to ever exist. His cooperative, fun-loving personality is a great contrast to his sometimes intimidating comments on things. Yeah. Well, sometimes, you see, Eric is a very close friend of mine, and sometimes he drives me nuts. But yeah, you know, I'm not perfect at all, and I don't want people to think I am. So, because that can be dangerous. That can put the wrong mindset into people's heads. I'm not terrible, that's for sure. Ooh, Mark says, animal style double-double with well-done fries. Oh, yeah. That would be good. A Fox says, what do people think about you loving ocean liners? Because I struggle to fit in. I struggle to fit in, too. I mean, I have friends, thankfully, that like ocean liners. You know, like my friend Chris and Eric likes some ocean liners. He's not like a super fan, but he likes the Queen Mary. He likes Titanic, I think. So yeah, I mean, it is hard because I have a lot of things I'm interested in. I like trains. I like ocean liners. I like Victorian, Edwardian architecture. You know, I like steamboats and steamships and, you know, and the history of art and architecture. I have all these weird things I'm interested in, and most recently I've become a tea person. And not just like any tea, like British, like black teas that you drink nicely. Not just like Lipton's, like, you know, whatever. But, you know, so it is hard because there's not many people. Well, actually, currently, there's nobody I know personally that, you know, that is like a friend of mine here in Oregon that I can like talk to about all this stuff or hang out with or whatever. You know, my friend Steve R. So the other Steve, not the one that does my the shows about the Queen Mary, but my other friend Steve R. You know, he will come visit me sometimes, and then we'll hang out. We'll go somewhere. And my friend, you know, Chris from LMG Vids, he comes up sometimes to visit, and then we go hang out somewhere and stuff like that. So that's always fun, you know, to do that. But yeah, you know, I can't convince Eric to move up here. You know, I told him that if he moves up here, you know, God will look on him more favorably. but he's sticking to California. So, let's see. Grandin Gaming says, do you live in Oregon Valley? No, I live in the Portland area. Ryan says, Alex, what are some food chains you like and don't like? Oh, no. I don't want to go too crazy on that because I don't really eat that much food chains. In-N-Out, I like In-N-Out. That's for sure. Up until recently, I really liked a burger chain that's like Pacific Northwest, and that's Burgerville. So that was a really good burger chain, but about a year ago, as I was ordering food, the food quality just took a dive, and I stopped ordering from there. But they were very reputable for years and years and years and years. So I did like them up until recently. When it comes to fried chicken stuff, I do like Raising Cane's. But if I'm going to get like bone-in fried chicken, you know, like drumsticks and thighs and chicken breast, I will always go KFC. I know some people are like, no, try Dave's or something. That's great. It's too expensive. I like KFC. I grew up on KFC. It's a comfort food. You know, I am not ashamed to admit that on occasion, because it is expensive, so it's not like I have it all the time. But on occasion, I do buy KFC. So, but I don't really, I cook food all the time for myself. Like, I buy all the ingredients, I make all the food myself, because going out and buying food all the time, it's expensive. I can't afford it, you know. So, so yeah, I cook everything myself. And that gives me the creative ability to try out new things. Like, I've been perfecting my recipe for coconut curry. I make like a Thai coconut curry all the time. Not all the, okay, maybe once every 2 weeks or so, I make a Thai coconut curry. And I've been kind of perfecting my skill at it. It's difficult when you're doing it without like an authentic recipe. But I've also been trying to do my own thing. And I think I'm getting closer and closer to it being very good. So, you know, I do things like that. You know, I eat, believe it or not, as fat as I am, I eat very vegetarian-like because meat costs a lot of money. And though I love meat, it's just too expensive to buy all the time. So, you know, I make a lot of foods that are vegetarian because it's cheaper. So I've been looking at alternatives, you know, things like tofu and, you know, and garbanzo beans and stuff like that. You know, so I have a lot of protein-rich foods that are plant-based just because it's cheap, you know. And, you know, I love Indian food. I love all kinds of South Asian, you know, East Asian foods. I like a lot of stuff like that. So I vary my diet a lot. So it's not always, you know, garbage. Daniel says, have you ever been to the California State Railroad Museum? No, I haven't. Oh, Tyler, that's so nice. Let's see. Vincent says, are the remains of SS Rex still on the ocean floor where it sank? I mean, are you talking about the SS Rex from the Italian line? If that's what you're talking about, I don't know if it's still there. I've looked into it, but I couldn't find any information on it. Nunya Biz says, I wish I have had Alex as a tour guide at Disneyland. Those of us who have multiple interests love your info overload. Thank you so much. That's what I love. I love information overload about stuff, you know, like everything. Like, you notice, like, my history video about New Orleans, like, it's all over the place. It talks everything from engineering to architecture to city design to the history of individual people even. You know, like, it's all over the place because that's just my interest. I love everything. Alex is bald. I cut my hair recently, that's why. Vincent says, is In-N-Out Cali exclusive? It used to be, but now they're spreading out to different states. So there's some in Arizona. They just built one in Oregon. I think they're building one in Seattle. Stuff like that. So it's spreading out now from the West. Let's see. Daniel says, Alex, would you like to travel back in time and ride the New York City 20th Century Limited train or the Southern Pacific Daylight train? Do you have a time machine? How did you get that past customs? I don't think I would ride either. I'm not... I like old trains. I like stuff from before the year 1900. I like the old-fashioned steam locomotives. I'm not into the stuff from the 1930s and 40s or anything like that. So, yeah, when it comes to steam locomotives and trains, I love the Victorian-era stuff. So, yeah. Ryan Hines says, in your opinion, Alex, what are the best sit-down restaurants? I mean, I don't know what you're asking. Like, I only go to local places. So, like, I could only tell you, like, places that exist locally, like, for instance, like, one of my favorite places to eat here in the Portland area is this place called Wildfin. It's a really good seafood restaurant. Really, really good. Things like that, but it's not like it's not a big chain. You won't find it in multiple states. So I don't usually sit down and eat at big chain restaurants. I don't like them, so I don't eat at them. Yeah. So, like, I don't eat at, like, Coco's or anything like that. Like, yeah. Conrad says, can you teach me how to tell the difference between fresh and frozen foods at restaurants? It's difficult because if the restaurant cooks the food very badly, you won't be able to tell the difference. But quite often you can tell the difference by the texture of the food. So let's say it's bell peppers, right? I don't think anybody would really serve you frozen bell peppers. But if they did, the one way you could tell between frozen bell peppers, frozen onions, for instance, is when you have it, the texture is almost like it's overly soft and mushy. Yeah, overly soft and mushy, and it feels rough on your tongue. Because what happens is in the freezing process, the water in the vegetables crystallize, and that punches through the cell walls and breaks up the structure of the vegetable. And that can make it an odd texture. I don't know how to describe it. It's just an odd texture. When you have it fresh, especially if they cooked it nicely, it will still have somewhat of a bite to it. It'll still have somewhat of a crunch, the fresh vegetables. and it will have a texture that seems normal. I don't know how to describe it. So yeah, I can usually tell the difference between when a vegetable is not fresh, you know, like, but most restaurants will serve you fresh vegetables over frozen. Where you have to worry is if they're serving you frozen, like pre-frozen meat. That's really what you should be concerned about. Not for your health and safety, but just for your quality assurance, you know, because meat is more likely the thing that's going to be frozen when they cook it. Frozen meat is not bad. It's just that if you're looking for the freshest of fresh, then obviously you don't want to eat frozen. But yeah, so there's things like that. But it also depends on how good the restaurant is, because some restaurants, they just overcook the vegetables and the meats, and you really can't tell, you know. Justin says, if you were dining on the Queen Mary, would you eat off the menus offered there, or would you have trouble with some of the things that they had at the time? Oh, like the historic menus. I don't think I would have much of a problem, because in the 1930s, they pretty much ate the same stuff we did. Just, there's still a little bit of weirdness in there from time to time. But, I mean, they had stuff like we had, like lamb chops, rare with very little mint sauce. But, you know, which it's funny, like that's become like a meme, but really lamb with mint sauce was a big thing in the early 20th century. So even the Queen Mary served it, lamb with mint sauce. But, no, I don't think on the Queen Mary I would have much of a problem. If I was on Titanic or Olympic, for instance, I may have a problem. But the cool thing about Queen Mary, and this is something that Titanic could not do, the cool thing about Queen Mary was so well stocked with food, and so much food, that if you were not happy with what was on the menu, and you were in first class at least, if you were not happy with what was on the menu, you could talk to the chef, and the chef could prepare you literally anything you wanted. Pretty much anything. I mean, you know, aside from maybe like, you know, stir-fried Madagascar hissing cockroaches, he could pretty much cook you anything. And that was what was really cool. Titanic didn't really offer that. They could adjust, you know, what was on your plate, so that way you had more or less of something that you like or don't like. But they couldn't create for you from scratch your own dish. So that's kind of something. Joe says, Japanese are the best sit-down restaurants, but not Korean-owned Japanese restaurants. Too many rolls. Yeah. A Fox says, have you ever been to Ireland, Belfast? No, I've never been outside the country before. Stephen Paul says, what is my opinion of New Amsterdam of 1938 of the Holland America line? I know of its existence, but I don't know much about it. I haven't been able to research that yet. I've been busy with other ships. Historic Boat says, were you concerned on telling the stuff that was going on outside my apartment? What was going... I don't know who you are. What was going on outside your apartment? Daniel says, what's your favorite train movie? I don't know any. I don't know any. I guess The General. That was a good movie. That's a Buster Keaton movie. A very famous movie. And I liked it. The General was really good. Conrad says, like clam broth. Conrad's talking about, so there was a popular dish that people had for breakfast, and it was clam juice. So in the early 20th century, clam juice was like all the rage to have for breakfast or as like a pre-dinner bouillon, you know. Clam juice. Oh gosh, no. But that's what they had. I could not drink that. You know, it's the clam juice is the result of boiling clams. You boil the clams, and the liquid that's left over is the clam juice, and that's you can drink that cold for breakfast or hot, if you prefer it hot. I could not drink that clam juice. No. Mm-mm. Ryan Hines, I would have just demolished the whole thing and started over with a whole new land. Historic Boat says, Alex, if you reach 40,000 subs, would you eat meals from the Queen Mary? I would eat meals from the Queen Mary right now. The problem is money. Costs a lot of money and a lot of time to make those foods because those are classic foods. So they require days to prepare. It's not just something you slap together at night. There's a lot of preparation involved because these are classic meals cooked in classic kitchens. And so a lot of the foods literally take days to prepare. And even the fastest foods take a whole day just from beginning to end to prepare. I don't have that kind of time on my hands. And frankly, I don't have that kind of money on my hands because I did look into it. I have a few menus of the Queen Mary. And I thought, why don't I make some of these and make a video about it? I had a separate channel that I made for that purpose. I was going to make videos of me cooking foods from the Queen Mary and other ships and eating it. When I looked at the price of how much everything would cost, it was exorbitant. I was going to start with something easy, the lamb with mint sauce. The prices were ridiculous. I was like, I can't afford that. I can't. So that's why I don't do it. But if someone wanted to cook me food from the Queen Mary, I'd eat it. Conrad says, do you have your passport? No, I don't. About to down. Ryan says, have you had any desire to get any sort of pets soon, or is it too much to handle? You know, I love pets. I really do. But, you know, I live a really busy life. I know that I wouldn't be able to have time to dedicate to a pet. So I don't believe that people should own a pet if they don't have time to dedicate to them. And so for that reason, I don't want a pet. When I first moved in here, my sister was like, oh, we'll get you a puppy, we'll get you a cat, I told her, I said, no, don't get me any pets. I said, I love pets to death, but I don't have the time to dedicate to them. Because I literally spend day and night working on videos for you guys. Day and night. I'm on the computer all the time. I'm reading books. I'm researching. Like, it is my life. I love it, but it's my life. And, it's, it takes up all my time. If I had to stop all the time to take a puppy out to go potty, or if I had to stop to clean a cat litter box, or if I had to suddenly spend a bunch of money and take the pet to the vet to fix something that they ate, I don't have the money or the time to deal with that. And so it wouldn't be fair for the pet for me to have one. So if one day I have some kind of assistance where someone can help me make videos, which would cost a lot of money, then I'd have more time on my hands, and then I probably could devote that time to a pet. But yeah, I don't have time for pets. The Best Bernice says, if Disney Cruise Line did make the Queen Mary a passenger ship besides the change in design, do you think it would have worked rather than making the magic or wonder? No, I don't think so, because it would have had to do more than just an aesthetic design change. The very essence of how Queen Mary was built is what makes her so expensive. She doesn't have enough rooms for today's profit margins. You know, she doesn't have the kinds of public spaces people would want today to run those profit margins. There's people that comment on my channel all the time, yeah, but people would love to have a historic experience on the Queen Mary. Oh, no doubt there are people that would have that, but there's no way you could fill the ship every single day with those people. You might be able to hold a monthly event where you go, okay, all the fans of ocean liners and people who want to try ocean liners, everyone aboard, and then you hold like a monthly event where they book out the ship and then it goes on a cruise or something. That might work, but it would not work every day. And because it wouldn't work every day, it would be too expensive to keep the Queen Mary running. Because not only do you have to deal with the ship's maintenance and the ship's general operations, but the ship's mooring too. The Queen Mary, where she sits today, she doesn't have to pay for mooring fees because she sits on the land she owns. But if she became a cruising ship, she would have to pay money to dock. And that's why cruise ships, they try not to stay too long at the dock, because the longer they stay there, the more money they have to pay. And that money is expensive. We're talking tens of thousands to even hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. Or even a month, depending on where you're at. I mean, it could be a really cheap port, but still, you know, especially if like you're like in New York, that's expensive. It's really expensive. So you would need to have the Queen Mary sailing every day, and you need to be able to fill her every day with those kinds of people who don't mind not having all the amenities that ships today would have. You know, Queen Mary would not get very good cell reception. You know, like, I know a lot of cruise ships don't, but they still get better cell reception than most. But Queen Mary would not get good cell reception. She's not designed for that. She would deflect all incoming cell reception. They even have difficulty putting Wi-Fi aboard the Queen Mary because the walls are all steel and they're thick steel, and so it's like they can't get the Wi-Fi transmissions to work all the time. So so it's things like that, you know. And then you'd have to deal with the fact that you're cramped in a tiny room. Even the biggest rooms are tiny by today's ship standards, you know. And so you would be stuck with these historic rooms with historic bathrooms. I mean, some people stay on the ship today, and we were talking about this yesterday on our live stream about Queen Mary's third class. You know, we were talking about how people, they stay in the hotel rooms today, they see the Formica covered bathrooms, and they go, oh, this looks so cheap and tacky. It looks like it was done in, the 1930s. And they don't realize that was the beauty of the 1930s, so it's things like that. And I think people underestimate the criticism of humanity. Like, people are very critical of what they spend money on. And so there's this romantic idea that, oh, if we get the Queen Mary running again, she will be the most popular ship ever because everybody wants to experience being on a classic ocean liner again. No, not everybody. I think a lot of people want to, but they don't realize what that means. They don't realize what an experience on an ocean liner is not like an experience on a cruise ship. Not at all. Not even in the slightest. It is so different, and thankfully, Queen Mary too she crosses the line between ocean liner and cruise ship. She has aspects of her that are like a cruise ship to make her more entertaining. But a ship like the original Queen Mary, no, she doesn't have that, you know? So, yeah, without going on a bigger rant. Storkboat says, hey, Alex, did you make a video on Walt Disney's obsession with the Queen Mary? You know what's funny? I did, and I put it out, and then, like, nobody watched it. And the video quickly became outdated because there was information I put in there that it made the video look old. So I was like, oh, boy. So I took it down, but there was a video about that, and not many people cared. Not many people watched it. So I don't think it was really worth it in the end. I spent a lot of time on that video. Yeah. Justin says, thanks for the answer, Alex. I'd love to know more about the different foods and teas served on ships over the years. If you could elaborate on that this time or next time. I would love to do that, but I don't even know where to start. You know, I don't know. I've tried looking for that information, but if you want that information, you have to buy stuff. And I don't have that much money, so I couldn't do that. Let's see. Error says, what are your thoughts on the Scorpion submarine? Is it an eyesore since it has nothing to do with Queen Mary's history? Even if it had something to do with Queen Mary's history, it's still an eyesore in my opinion. You know, I know there's a lot of people out there that love naval ships and submarines, and I'm probably going to personally insult them when I say this, but I don't care about that submarine. I've tried to care. I did some research on it. I thought, you know, maybe I'll care more about it if I learn more about it, and I did. I learned more about it, and I still don't care. I'm not a Navy ship person, you know, and especially not even the Russian Navy. So that submarine means nothing to me, and I want it out of there. I want it gone because it is ruining the sightline of the Queen Mary. You walk up there and it's a rusting, falling apart hulk sitting next to the Queen Mary, which I know people are like, oh, she's a rusting, falling apart hulk. But you know, so I don't like that submarine. I want it out of there. I personally don't care if they scrap the submarine to do it, but I know there are some people that really love that submarine who want to see it refurbished, and fine, but get it out of there. Move it somewhere else. Move it somewhere more popular, you know. I really don't care. I don't like that submarine, but, you know, but just because I don't care doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It just means that I personally don't care. So, yeah. Robert Williams says, love the train. Thank you. It's so nice that it's not squeaking anymore. I can't even tell you. It would squeak so loudly I couldn't even think. So, it's great. It's my favorite one. Tyler says, I nearly broke my back when I toured that submarine when I slipped on the stairs. Oh, geez. Yeah, that's... Oh, my gosh. The best Bernice says, it looks pretty ugly seeing the Queen Mary next to a carnival ship, don't you think? Yeah, the carnival ship really does ruin the sightlines of the Queen Mary, but those carnival ships pay the Queen Mary's bills, so I'm not going to complain. That submarine never paid the Queen Mary's bills, so that's why I don't really care that much. But the carnival ships, I hate looking at them, but they pay Queen Mary's bills, you know. Every time you purchase a voyage to sail from that Carnival cruise terminal, a percentage of that goes directly into funding the Queen Mary's maintenance. So if any of you live in Southern California or you plan to sail out of Long Beach, do so, because the money you spend goes towards the Queen Mary and restoring and refurbishing her. So, yeah, that is something that yeah. Mark Raymond says, have you seen the new video from Titanic Honor and Glory with the engine room? No, I haven't, actually. I stopped checking in because for a while they just went completely silent. So I was just like, ugh. You know, so I stopped checking in. But I'll check it out after the stream is done, which should be very soon because I've been on here for way too long. Emperor says, how would you feel if the Queen Mary was scrapped in, I don't know, this year or sometime from now? Well, it's not going to happen, so I'm not really worried about it. But if in a fantasy realm it did, I would think that's a darn shame. I would be very sad, yes, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that much. I mean, I'd be surprised because, again, it's not going to happen. The ship is undergoing refurbishment. They're not going to invest, you know, $10 million and then go, you know what? How about we throw away that $10 million? Like, they're not going to do that. They already spent it. They spent the $10 million. So, but if it did, I wouldn't be that surprised because, you know, frankly, over the years, and I can't say who and what because it would not be good to do that, but over the years, various folks who have been in charge of the ship over the years have never known what to do, how to run the ship, how to treat it with respect, how to encourage people to learn more about it. You know, I think the last organization that cared for the ship that actually did a decent job was the Ratherport Corporation, back when Jack Rather was still alive. He did an excellent job taking care of the ship. I mean, there was always room for improvement. There were things that I think he could have done to make things better. But, you know, hindsight is 20/20. But the other companies that came afterwards, the other organizations that came afterwards, a lot of times, you know, and even city officials that came afterwards, a lot of times they really just didn't care. They saw it as a potential cash cow that wasn't generating the milk, you know? So they were like, all right, how about we like take some sticks and we whack this cash cow to see if the milk comes out? Instead of going, all right, let's feed the cow, let's take care of the cow, let's, you know, let's do all these things to fix the cow so it produces the cash we want. I know it's a really weird metaphor, but, you know, so instead they're just like, you know what, let's just beat the cash out of this cow. That's what they did. That's what these companies and organizations and people from the city have done all these years, is instead of trying to fix the problem, they've been going in and just trying to beat the living daylights out of the Queen Mary to get the money they want. And that's what is so frustrating. Is I look at it, and I have a background in theme parks, hotels, and entertainment. I know what tourism's want. I took classes in tourism, the tourism industry. I know what people want. And actually, it's not hard to know what people want either. Frankly, if I told you, hey, come stay at this dilapidated hotel that doesn't let you see any of the historic big rooms that they advertise, and you have to pay $18 for parking, $40 per person for admission, and everything is run down and broken, and you're not going to have hot water in your room, and you're probably not going to have air conditioning in your room. And I'd say, are you going to spend $500 on that? I mean, that's a no-brainer. Most people would say, well, no, I'm not going to spend $500 on that. There's your problem. So instead of like fixing the ship, which was the very problem from the beginning, and keeping it maintained, they're like, it's too much money to fix the ship. Let's just like raise the prices and get more money out of people. And then they don't even know how to run the ship. They don't know whether it's a hotel or a museum or an attraction. And so they don't know what to offer, what to push forward. And, you know, if they had gotten, some kind of, like, experts on hotels and tourism and the entertainment industry as a whole, they could have gotten better information on what to do, what to offer, who to push the demographics, you know, like who to market to. But they never did. They just kind of went, oh, well, it's a hotel, so we're going to push the amenities. And then another person comes in, they're like, no, it's a museum. Let's push the museum. And another person comes in, they go, no, it's an attraction. Well, we don't have money to upgrade the attraction, so let's just push what we have. And next thing you know, there's no creativity. It's just, it continues being one of those things where no one knows what it is, and they don't know how to market it. And an idiot like me can come in and be like, dude, research. Go to theme parks. What are they doing? Go to museums. What are they doing? Like, one of the things about Queen Mary is it's so outdated in terms of being a museum. Queen Mary is one of those places where you go there to read plaques on a wall. Me and my friend Steve were talking about this, was it last night? Last night, yeah. My friend Steve R. We were talking about this last night, and there's plaques all over the Queen Mary, and he and I were talking about, like, you know, it's great that information's there, but it was boring. And we're like, you know, look at what modern museums are doing. Modern museums are creating interactive features that even the adults can get in on and learn in a hands-on point of view. The Queen Mary needs that. It's been something that's been part of museums for 20 years, but the Queen Mary's never been updated in that way. And so what do you do? You bring a bunch of kids on the ship and you're like, look, kids, read that plaque over there. No. You want them to interact with the environment, you know? So it's just, sorry, I went off on a tangent because I feel so passionately about the Queen Mary, and when I see these organizations and stuff like that make these terrible decisions on how to upgrade the ship, and they're looking at it from a perspective that is 30 years old, you know, I'm like, dude, you got to look at it from a modern perspective. You have to look at it from what are modern places doing today to bring in people. So Justin, as far as I know, Carnival still operates out of Long Beach. They still have the cruise terminal there, and they still sail. None of your business. What a great cow reference. Explains it well. It's literally what they're doing. They're not even like trying to like take care of the cash cow. They're just like, let's just beat the money out of it and wait till, you know, we get our money. It's just like sad. It's just like, geez. Cunard says you could do a video promoting Carnival cruises out of Long Beach, in turn helping the Queen Mary. I can't do that. There's a difference between me helping the Queen Mary and me promoting a business, and I don't want to do that. Notice on my channel, you guys don't see any videos of me like doing like product placement. So like I never go like, oh, this video is sponsored by NordVPN, your best, you know. I don't do that because I don't like that. You know, I can't describe it. I mean, it's normal. That's what, you know, that's what people do. I mean, Johnny Depp's got, you know, that, what's that called? The perfume, whatever it is. You know, that's normal stuff, but still, for some reason, it it's not right. It doesn't seem right for me. So, so that's why you'll never really see me like doing these like, oh, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Like, I don't like it. And I do get these companies coming to me and being like, hey, make a commercial for us. And I don't respond because I don't like that. Do I put commercials on my channel? Yes, I put the ads on my channel. That's how I make money. That's how I produce more videos, because the videos cost me money to make. They cost me time and money, and time is money. But yeah, I just, oh, yeah. So, what was the point I was trying to make? Oh, yeah, promoting Carnival. Yeah, I don't want to promote Carnival. if they made like a huge donation, like they were like, oh, we're gonna, donate $50 million, right? I'd be like, okay, here's my carnival video, promoting them. But, but they don't, at the moment, their contract is just, a portion of the money goes towards the Queen Mary. And I'm like, that's nice, but, not enough. No, I haven't seen the Murder on the Orient Express. Mark says, have you seen any of the videos from the history guy? I have, yes. Historic Rose says, hey, Alex, have you heard of Morning Brew? Advertisement goes on. Yeah. Jeffrey says, thank you for not doing product placement. If one more person tries to sell me shirts or a Disney candle, I know. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, exactly. I do not like that product placement thing. Like, I don't like, like, it's weird. And it's almost Truman Show-ish. Have you guys seen the movie Truman Show? It's weird. It's like all of a sudden, because the character, she'll be like, oh, look what I picked up today, honey. It's Twining's Lady Grey Tea. Like, that's what I feel like it is when I watch these YouTubers doing that. They're like, and then that they don't try those products. That they don't. Like, I saw a YouTuber once who was like, he was trying not to laugh. He was sponsored by a VPN. And this person doesn't use the VPN. I don't use VPNs. I don't need them. Like, but this person is like trying not to laugh because they know that they don't use VPNs, but they're trying to promote it because they got sponsored for it. And I'm just like, I don't like it. So people got mad at me when I allowed ads on my channel. They said, oh, you sold out. And I'm like, well, it does cost money to produce this. I do need to make money. But I don't want to do product placement. It is so weird and odd. And I feel it's unethical for me to sell you guys stuff. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not unethical, but it's unethical. It crosses my ethics. That's for sure. It crosses my ethics. I'm a person who I've got a very strong code of ethics. And so I don't want to sell you guys things, So, that being said, this video is sponsored by... No, I can't do it. I can't do it. Let's see. Twinings used to make Queen Mary tea. I heard that, yeah. Let's see. Hey, Alex, what's your thoughts on Pixar's Wall-E? People say Up is very sad, but Wall-E is too. Wall-E is a great movie. I love Wall-E. But I love Up just a little bit more. So, but I do love Wall-E. I have both movies on Blu-ray. Love the movies. Especially Wall-E. But yeah, Up is just a little bit more... That one just... Up just... I cry like a baby when I watch it. I just... I lose it. I just lose it when I watch that movie. Let's see. Hello, Professor. How you doing? You joined in just as I was getting ready to leave the live stream. Lightning McQueen says, normally when I see those sponsor videos, I skip through the ad or I just get bored and get up. I do too. When people go like, oh, this video is sponsored by NordVPN, I'm like, click. I'm like skipping through it. Like, I don't want to see it. Jamie says, Alex, you should try Yorkshire tea if you get a hold of it. For many of us Brits, it's our favorite. For a standard cuppa to it's hard to beat. Awesome. Yeah, I'll look into that. Yorkshire tea. Is that a brand or is that literally a flavor? Because if it's a brand, I want to know what flavor. Emperor Hirohito says, what if Aquatania was never scrapped and was serving as a museum today? That would be cool. But I don't know what you're asking. It would be cool, though. I would like to see that. But yeah. I would never say no to there being a museum ship. I may not like SS United States that much. I may not ever visit SS United States. But I would never say no to somebody wanting to refurbish the ship to make it a museum. I would never say no to that. Because there's already very few ocean liners that exist today. And we know so little about them ourselves. Because, well, I mean, speaking from my generation, you know, most of my generation has never been on an ocean liner, including myself. And so I think that it's great to have them still around so you can learn about them. Well, I have been on an ocean liner if you count the Queen Mary, but she wasn't sailing, but that's not what I mean. Yeah. Cunard says, I always thought that YouTube places ads on videos to see whether or not people are watching live and just not letting the video play. If it is skipped, then they know someone is actually watching. No, they place ads regardless, because I don't know if you guys know this, but sometimes, like, if you click on a video but don't press play, but you can see an ad is about to play, but you don't press play, and you kind of check the comment section, for instance, all of a sudden the ad will start playing. It's because YouTube doesn't care if you're watching. They want the ad to play because they get money for playing that ad. So you can try that next time. You can, if you're on your computer, you can right click and then to open a video in a new tab, and then you can go into that tab, don't press play, scroll down to the comment section real quick, and you'll notice that the ad will suddenly start playing, even though you didn't press play. That's because YouTube, again, they don't care if you're watching. They just want the ad to play because that's how they get their money, if the ad plays. So, sneaky. But I say sneaky, but I rely on them doing that. Because this is how I make my money. This is how I make all these videos for you guys, is ad revenue. But again, product placement is not something I do because I think that does cross the line. So I'm not the one, though, that puts all the ads. So some people go like, oh, Alex, your videos have way too many ads. I don't put those in there. YouTube does. I could adjust it. But if I adjust it, then YouTube will be like, okay, you adjusted the ads, so we're not going to promote your video that much. So it's just how the algorithm works. So if I touch the ads, they'll be like, okay, no more promotion for you. So I don't touch the ads. I let them play as they are. I need those ads to keep the channel running. So, you know, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, money makes the world go round. So, but I hope that the content I bring to you, though, is really good. And to be honest, you get ad breaks. The ad breaks are every 5 minutes. And to be honest, on most TV, especially in the US, if you watch television in the US, ads come every 4 minutes. So you're still getting an extra minute of content between ads on YouTube. So it's a little bit better than watching television. And on television, ads usually run for a minute and a half to 2 minutes sometimes. But a minute and a half is about how long ads run. On YouTube, ads run for 30 seconds, no more. They do 15 seconds for the first commercial, 15 seconds for the second commercial. That's it. You can skip through it. And so that's still better than watching television. So, you know, that's a positive. Do I like watching ads on my own videos? No. I skip through ads on my own videos. Because I do watch my own videos. So I don't like ads as much as you guys do, but I do need them. I have not watched Surrender Emperor Hirohito. Boy, you really love Emperor Hirohito, don't you? Jeffrey says, I'd buy an Alex the Historian coffee mug if you ever sell your own merch again. I would love to. The place, so I had a merch store one time, but I didn't like it because they charged exorbitant prices for everything. Like a t-shirt was like $50, and I wasn't happy with it, so I lowered the price to some ridiculous amount. Like, it was to the point where the T-shirt was $15 for you guys, but the money I made back from it was like 5 cents. And there was already not that much interest back then in my shirts, so I was like, I don't know. I wouldn't buy a shirt that costs $15. Not a T-shirt, at least. If it's a button-up, yes, of course. But a T-shirt, I wouldn't buy a T-shirt for $15. So I was just kind of like, if I wouldn't buy it, I wouldn't want other people to buy it. You know, that's just my ethics. Like, if I'm not going to spend that kind of money on something, I don't want to make other people do that. So, and the coffee mugs were cool, but they were so expensive. I was just like, I would never spend $20 or $25. No. It was $25. I would never spend $25 on a coffee mug. I say as I have one that from Disneyland that costed $30, but still. In my right mind, I would never spend $30 on a coffee mug. Sheridan says, maybe you could be sponsored by Queen Mary Hotel when it reopens. I mean, I'm not against it, but I don't really... I'm wary of the people in charge of the Queen Mary, just because it's like they say, once bitten, twice shy. You know, in the past, we've had many people who've made a lot of promises about the Queen Mary, and then it's never delivered. So I'm very wary of that. And if I was promoting, I would be putting my name behind it. People would trust that it's the Alex the Historian ethics and quality, whatever that means. And if they don't live up to that, it affects my reputation. It makes me look bad. I'm promoting them. So I'm wary of it. I'm very, very wary of it. Ryan Hines says, I wish I could have your hat you used to wear when going to Disneyland all the time with Alex Historian logo on it. You mean this hat? Yeah. I love this hat. I never really have a chance to wear it anymore. Will you make a video on the life of Emperor Hirohito? I don't think I will, no. Yeah. Justin says, exactly. Hirohito is spamming the chat. Never thought I'd say that. Yeah, Hirohito is spamming the chat. Sheridan says, of course you would have to investigate first. Yeah, I mean... I can't say too much for legal reasons. But let me just say, I've been looking into things like that. I can't say anything more, because if I give any kind of opinion on anything, if I say anything, it could be a legal issue. So, but I have been looking into things like that, you know, about like what kind of companies or organizations to help that would help the Queen Mary. And all I can say is, of the organizations that I think are most helpful would be QMI Restore the Queen, you know, because they actually, you know, are working to try to fundraise for the ship. So they're the one organization I trust, but I have yet to find another organization that I think has an incentive to ensure the long-standing health of the ship. I'm going to say it that way. So yeah, this is the historian hat. And then yeehaw! Let's get railroading, guys. I have my railroad hat. Got this a long time ago. I was so proud. Let's see. Historic Boat says, "Hey Alex, how's your Queen Mary 2 GoFundMe going?" Pretty good. I think I have just over $800 saved up, which is pretty cool. The link's in the description for you guys who want to donate to that. That's for me being able to go to the UK aboard the Queen Mary 2. When I get to the UK, I'll be filming a lot of stuff for the channel. As soon as I have all the money I need saved up, I will be booking that trip. But yes, I've also been saving up my own money for that as well. So, but at this rate, I'm going to say it's going to take a whole year to save up all the money I need. So at this rate, so in order to occupy my time without making you guys wait years for me to go to the UK, I'm actually planning a trip to New Orleans in spring, and then I'll be filming stuff in New Orleans to bring you guys more New Orleans content. So that's what I plan to do, because that's a much cheaper, easier trip to do. So, Element says, "I just got here, but I think this is starting to turn into a 3-hour live stream." It really is. I have to, yeah. Chris Butler says, "Thanks again for your third-class Lost Spaces video. Even as a former Queen Mary tour guide, I learned a lot." Oh, thank you so much. It's great. I love talking to Steve and getting his insight on, on the Queen Mary and stuff like that. I learned so much new stuff, and it's really, I love when people can exchange their knowledge, because like with that knowledge now, I can make other videos about the ship, and I can, I can show people new things that I would have never thought to show them before. And I can look into things, a lot deeper and stuff like that. So yeah, that show has been very educational for me as well as the viewers, Oh yeah, I have a playlist of the Queen Mary's Lost Places. So it's literally called Queen Mary's Lost Places. That's the name of the playlist. And then you can go on there, and then I have all the videos. I think it's 9 videos, I think. So it's 9 of those. And I'm thinking in the future what I'll do is I will use those to create smaller topic videos that are like 7, 8, 9 minutes long, that talk about individual topics with a lot more images and things, if possible. So that way people don't have to watch those 90-minute live streams to understand the history. So, all right, folks, I'm going to end the live stream now. It has been exactly 3 hours. I did not intend for it to be this long, but oh my goodness, I do need to get going. I have things to do. So, thank you guys all so much. Sorry if I didn't get to everybody's comments. I'm trying. It's a lot of people, but that's what makes it so fun. So anyway, thank you guys so much. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.